There we go.
Well, thanks for feeling faithful coming back. When I said I would get you working, we lost a few people, but that's okay. It's good. I couldn't listen to me for this long. The thing that I really think is just so totally cool about what you have done, and I know that some of you know how sincere I am about that. Someday when I grow up, I hope to be like you all. You know, I really like, and here's why. If I would define my life right now, I would define myself as a story collector. Yes, a story collector. Because I really, really enjoy, love, and am energized by hearing people's story. I think that's because, as I said earlier, I think story is the language of our souls. And, you know, it's funny because someone said the idea of myth. We say, well, myth means something that's not right. A myth is something that's not true. Actually, myths are often more true than reality because it's a story and the language of the story. That's why fairy tales and other things have a big impact. So here's my theory. My theory is that when we can get the story from our prospective clients, our clients, even our colleagues, anytime we get another human being's story, or we share our story, we literally become better. And it makes us more effective in every way you can measure effectiveness. It's just that good. And here's the thing I run into, is when I say this to people in your profession, you guys actually do it, so you're not too impressed by it. But the thing is you've got to teach people who don't do it well, attorneys and others, you got to teach us how to do it. You got to teach your colleagues how to do it. You got to teach your friends that are helping you. You may even need to teach family members to do it so they can do it with other people. And what are you trying to teach them is to get people to talk about their life in story form. I'm going to actually give you story form and actually have you do it in a second here. But the reason is because when you really get the story form of a person's life, and it's going to take a while. And that's why, see, it's interesting, because I could sit up here and talk about these really detailed tax techniques. In fact, you should ask them to invite me back to talk about 501c4s, because I think that's the newest thing, newest hot button. Yeah, C4s are the ticket. And they're great for you because it gets it out of the donor-advised funds, and yet it can still help a donor-advised fund, still help you. It's a lot more flexible. It can take stock. They can hold stock. But that's just to show you that I do know tax stuff, and I get excited about some of that too. But if I told you about that, it would only apply to a very small percentage of you. And you'd have to remember it for the next time you deal with someone who can use it. What I'm going to tell you is good to go no matter where you are and no matter what you're doing. And I think that's what's important. Getting the ability to elicit story from your client. This is where we're going with this. Once you get that story down, of all the people that are in the constellation of wealth transfer and affluent people, it is the planned giving officer, the development officer, who has the best shot at getting this right. Now, just to scare you a little bit, it's been hard, but attorneys have finally got the wake-up call. And they're going to try to story collect from you all who've been doing it for years, decades, maybe forever, in terms of the profession. Because they're realizing that it's the only thing that keeps us from being a commodity. They got to compete against LegalZoom somehow, so they're going to actually have to get off the clock, stop charging people by the minute, who then say, no, I don't have any more to say. I don't have any more to say. What do you, was that 3 minutes I just used up? Because everyone likes to talk plan because it's like, yeah, you can actually be my friend if you're doing it right. Well, they're catching up. But the problem is, it's very difficult to do. It really is. And so I'm not kidding, trying to be, light about it and saying, well, just go out and do it. No, it's hard. Because what you have to do is you have to say the right things in the right time, in the right way, to invite the story. You have to invite it. Because you can't knock too hard on that door, the interior counsel. You got to invite that out. And so what you have to know is what to look for. Once you get the story, here's where it gets easy. All you do is help them write the next chapter. One more time. All you're doing is helping them write the next chapter. You don't need them to die. You don't need them to tell you all about the money. Money is a part of life. It's like the person said, look, I'm not worried about how much money I get after I marry you, because if I marry you, I got that. I got you. So your wallet comes with you, right? The same thing here is when you get the person's story, of course their money's a part of that. You don't even have to, you'll see it comes very natural. So, what I'm going to do is first describe story, then I'm going to read the story from the materials, just a little bit of it. So, because some of you are going to say, Ray is going to a bridge too far here, but I want to show you that it's not a bridge too far. And this, what I'm going to read is an actual story of an actual client. This actually happened, and they actually had the kind of dollars, actually they had more money than these dollars indicate. I've done this with a woman on the East Coast that had $30, $40 million, and she said it was life-changing. 2 years ago, I did it with one. It's interesting. This woman who had $300 million. I did this process. You know what she said at the end of the thing that she got done? She goes, yeah, her husband never wanted her to give away money, because to him, it was giving away money. See, for somebody who wants to be in control, giving away money. And finally, she said the magic word. She goes, yeah, I want to give that $25 million away now. And she did. And her words were, I'm finally going to give away money that's going to, here it is, do some good. Do some good. See, it's baked in. It's built in. All I had to do was show what's possible. And by the way, I'd have got her to give away the whole $400 million if she hadn't died before her husband. But he was still around, and so we'll have to work on him. But the reality is it's all about the story. Her story started, and as she got further along the story, all I had to do was tell her, this is the next chapter. The next chapter is where it wins. All right, so now I'm going to tell you about the story. I'm going to read this little thing that I have, and I'm sorry I have to read this, but if I had done this, I'd have sent it out earlier, and it's just cheating. But I can kind of tell you. The idea of story is, like, a lot of people think that, I got to get my glasses. I think I left it in here. A lot of people think story is just, like, uh-oh. These are my sunglasses. That's not going to work. Oh, well. Let's make it bigger. Go for it, right? Here they are. Here they are. My wife dresses me in, these are her fashion statement glasses. I told her they look like goggles, but, I just go with what she tells me. So here they are. So stories. What are the elements of a good story? I'm just going to read this to you, but this is really cool. So listen. What are the elements of a good story? While there are many scholarly analyses of narrative structure, here is the simplest way to put it. Are you listening? Good. A story begins when something knocks life off balance. A story begins when something knocks life off balance. Then the story progresses, or the plot thickens, as the protagonists struggle to restore the balance and peace while antagonistic forces block and resist them. Finally, the story ends as the struggle results in either the restoration of balance or the failure to recover it. Okay? So just think of, in simple terms, a story has a protagonist, the person who is going through the story. That's your client, that's you. Then that protagonist must have some idea of the way things are supposed to be. Use that. The way things are supposed to be. But there is an antagonist or antagonistic forces that stop that. They got sick. I got derailed. I was hurt. I didn't get the job. And then that causes struggles related to that knocking off balance to try to get back to the way things were supposed to be. And then the resolution is, and so here I am, it's better, and I think I can win. Or here I am, and all is lost. It's a tragedy. All right? Either way. So, and now he gives some examples. So for a story to be a story, there must be a problem that makes life not as it ought to be. If we said, Little Red Riding Hood took some food to her grandmother and they ate it together. Little Red Riding Hood took some food to her mother and they ate it together. That, my friends, is not a story. That's a statement, but it's not a story. And it's not a story because, we got to have a plot. A story must have, something that that has a possibility in it. Here's Little Red Riding Hood was at her grandmother's house, but a wolf broke in and ate them both. That's another statement. It's got more information to it, still not a story. It's still not a story. Because the story must account for how life should be, an explanation of how it got thrown off balance, and some proposed solution. Now, the significance of stories is this. While many stories are often no more than entertainment, narratives are actually so foundational to how we think that they determine how we understand and live life itself. So, the reality is I'm going to give you an example of my story as I look to read this story. So my story might be a little bit like this. And this is what I'm actually going to ask you to do. So in the interest of full disclosure and being transparent, let me give you a little bit of my story. So my story would start out, I was born on the west side of Chicago to an unwed mother who gave me up for adoption in a place that was born in the Cook County Hospital, and it was in a place on the west side of Chicago. And in my mind, my life was headed for some pretty bad stuff on the south side of Chicago, but lo and behold, I was in this little orphanage, I guess, called the Chicago Foundling Home, and along came this couple from Glen Ellen. And yeah, out in this western suburb with affluence, there was this like 1 out of a million black couple that came and adopted this little boy called Ray and took me to this place that was like heaven compared to the west side, and it was a place called Glen Ellen. And I thought to myself, wow, this is great. And I grew up as a little kid, and everything was going fine until in kindergarten. I grew up in a segregated area, and kind of sort of nobody that was white kind of came in, and nobody that was black kind of went out of the area. And that was kind of the story. It didn't seem to be all that different. And then, in fact, it's a funny story. Just since we're telling stories, I am telling stories. Funny story is, I grew up, and it was so segregated. Now remember, we're in the middle of an affluent white community, still is, and we were actually in Wheaton at that time. And when someone who wasn't the same as us came in the door, it was a really startling event. So what happened was, the one thing, my mom was a domestic, and domestic in the sense that people brought ironing for her. Back in those days, you ironed clothes, and they'd bring a whole pile of clothes, and she'd iron them, fold them up, and give them back, and that's how it worked. And she'd make money for that. It was great. And we would live 4 or 5 before school, and someone came with it. And I always remember, because we'd always say, "Hey, Mama, the white lady's here." So that's how shocking it was for us. The white lady's here.
So she made the clothes, and my mom would do it. Well, everything was going good until something knocked me off a bit. I was in kindergarten. Little boy was there was only a few of us in the school. It was completely integrated, and I went, and the little boy went behind me, and he called me just nasty, foul, racial epithets every day, every day, every day, every day. Finally, I said, look, Mom and Dad, I'm not going to school. They said, oh, you're going to school. In fact, we're going to give you some punishments because you didn't want to go to school. I said, punishments? You think this is punishment? Wait till I get to school. It's really bad. No, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names over, they were hurting me. But anyway, so I went back to school, and then I finally came home and said, look, actually, I'm not going back to school. You can beat me, kill me, I don't care, I'm not going back. And then, of course, they resolved it. Well, I sort of kind of never forgot that. And that became kind of a thing, and I started struggling with this. Who am I? What am I? Am I kind of am I a black guy trying to be cool in the black community because I can't be cool because my parents are really Christian folks who don't let me be cool because cool means you got to do stuff that they won't let me do? Or can I be like the white guys who are kind of rich and stuff? I couldn't figure it out, so fine, I figured out I'll do it with sports, got a scholarship, went to school, thought I'd be smart, lived happily ever. But along the way, when I was a kid, somebody put me in front of a TV, and I remember when Kennedy was shot. I looked at my mom and said, Mom, I'd like to be president. And because now they don't have them. We don't have one. What do our people do? And she goes, oh, yeah, hey, that's fine. You can be president, but you have to be a lawyer. Ding, 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 ding. So I became a lawyer, and then I thought I could change the world. But in the meantime, I was in the 80s. I went to school, and it was the me decade, and I was full of me. And so staying with the decade, I went with me, and I thought I could make money, and married this beautiful gal who just rang all the right bells in my life. And so then we grew up, and I just kind of got diverted, and we had lots of kids. We never figured out what was causing it, but we had 7 of them, and it just was fun. And then ultimately, I went into estate planning, and taxes were really boring, but then all of a sudden, I was able to find a niche that was in estate planning. And now I'm really trying to make a difference by helping people see that they can use wealth to change the trajectory of people's lives. Well, that's my story.
Now, the whole idea would be, what knocked it off balance? You saw it. Is it going to be restored? Maybe. What's my goal? But it didn't take long, and it's just elements, But I told you enough. I could tell some of you are saying, oh, that's pretty personal. But that's kind of how you have to get it. And so I just set the example for you, so none of you should say, oh, wait, you're asking me to do what you wouldn't do. So in the materials, on page 12 of the appendix, it's actually in the appendix section, it says Exhibit 2, Statement of Wealth Transfer Intent from Larry A. Johnson, a business owner. And you'll see how it starts out. It says, and of course, here's all the formal stuff. And what it is, you say, what's the point here, Ray? What I'm going to show you now is the story that I just illustrated in quick form. I'm going to show you what that story looks like when you get it all figured out and come to your office with that new $5 million gift, right? So we're going from, what has this got to do with my $5 million gift to, this is what it has to do with your $5 million gift, okay? So this was his story, and I got this story out of him the same way I'm going to ask you to get the story out of each other when we do our little exercise. So let's just kind of skim through it. We won't have a chance to read it all. It's too long. This statement is being prepared by me, Larry Johnson, in 2016 to share my thoughts and intentions. Okay, fine. And now he starts the next paragraph saying, I am the eldest son of Bill and Linda Johnson. My father, the eldest of 3, no daughters. Notice how he talks about his parents. Very important. If people aren't talking about their parents, you haven't got the story, because everybody came from somewhere, all right? And that affected where they're going. So you got to figure out where they were so you can kind of figure out where they're going. All right. And so if you don't know about a person's parents, I don't care if they're 90 years old, you need to know about their parents or wherever they came from. And then go on to my first year, and then go on to successfully complete law school. My mom was the eldest in her family. Dad was originally a criminal defense lawyer, third paragraph. His business was successful. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the university school, a private school in the Cleveland suburb. My neighborhood was very economically diverse.
growing up, so I learned to appreciate the struggles of the less fortunate. Ding, 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 ding. See, so if you're a plan-giving person, you're just listening. He just threw that out there, but because you're a story collector, you're just listening for the points of the story that tell you where they're going. And he seemed to emphasize that, so you're paying. I received good grades, graduated, I went to join the Boston Celtics. This isn't Larry Johnson, the real Larry. But welcome event, he actually was in the pros for a bit, this person. But I had an injury, and it was tumultuous time, and ends up that there was breakup, Vietnam, some things, Case Western, 3 children, law professor, his wife dies, last paragraph on page 12. First paragraph on 13, dad dies. And then the second paragraph, 2 things happened that changed the professional direction of my life. I acquired a farm, started breeding horses, and then he fell in love with art. And then all of a sudden, my finances led me to a major activity, philanthropy, third paragraph. And now he quotes someone. St. Ignatius of Loyola said, teach us to give and not count the cost. Suzanne and I take the time to use our financial resources to support the causes that grew out of our life story. So there it goes. And what I'm trying to show you is that this is how the story led to it. And this isn't great. It actually was much better, but by the time I dumbed it down so you wouldn't know who I'm talking about, I lost a lot of the elements. He actually wasn't a Christian at all. But he had another, it was another faith group, but he was so well known in that group, I couldn't really use him. And the stories about his family, oh my gosh, almost something I couldn't really, if I put it in print, you wouldn't have believed it, so I just had to dumb it up. So the point is, I got that detail from that individual. And that led to gifts, and it led to me soliciting those gifts. So what I want you to do now is, with the paper, I want you to write your story for the next 10 minutes. Take the time. Start out with the how it began, how it all kind of started, And you heard my story, so it's not like you don't know what. And then how it began, how you expected life to be, how you kind of expect, how it started off, and then, secondly, I want you to say, what threw it off? What were some things that threw it off? Start with your parents, then your life, and then what threw it off? Did a parent die? Did something go wrong? What happened that threw life off balance? Then next, after it threw it off balance, then what did you do? What are the subplots of how you tried to recover? Might be one plot, there might be 15. But what are some of them that you tried to do to recover? And then, where did that put you, and how did you get to the now? Where did that kind of put you now? And then write that down, and then in 10 minutes, and then after that, we're going to switch, and then I'm going to have somebody that you don't know, don't cheat on me, that you don't know, come up and try to talk with you and solicit that story. So the person who comes to you won't know your story, but they will try to profile you in a way that they get the story. So when you write the story down, do not read that story to them. That's just for you to know what the story is. Because what's going to happen is that person is going to talk to you, and you're only going to tell them what they ask you. Don't just read them. And then, when it's over, what I want you to do is kind of give them the story and see how close they got to what you were actually your story. And hopefully pretty close. And then you're going to switch. All right? Because here's the key. We need to talk with people in a way that gets them to say things about themselves that they might not normally say. But you can't just go up and say, read the story you wrote, because they haven't written one. Right? So you got to get good at it. And by having your own story, you know what it's like. So that's our goal. And then at the end, I'll come up the last 3 minutes or so and try to gain some insights from what you all tell me happened. All right? 10 minutes, go. You're writing your story, starting out with, I was born, my parents did, or something. How life was supposed to be, and it was all going great until
I just did the math and it's going to be 7 minutes, but don't worry. Just write 3 minutes faster.
organization, you really do represent who you represent. I'm not asking that if you don't represent an organization, make up something. And then start the conversation. And what you want to do is find a way to get them to tell you as much as they can. And the person being interviewed, just respond to what's being asked. Right? If they ask you, what town you grew up in, tell them. But just do that. And the idea is to try to use questions and person interviewing. You can share. You can use yourself. One of the things that I think is really good is when people don't expect what they don't expect, you have to reset the table a little bit. You have to set the table. And so some of you, I think the best thing you can maybe do is when you start the conversation with this new person, set it up so that they expect that you're going to ask questions about them. Maybe you'll say something like, I'm from, Michigan State University, and I'm really just so glad to have this opportunity to talk to you because, and then maybe you say something that's good. At the end of the thing, the person who interviews you is going to give you some feedback about how effective it was, and you're going to switch roles to each person will have a chance. Should we switch or should I move to a separate person? Hold on. It's time. So everybody, this is the tough part. Go find someone you haven't talked to and go with them.
person who's interviewing, I'll give you another 15 seconds so you can kind of end so it's not too abrupt. And then we got to switch. I know, this is just like an appetizer. People are really disliking me right now, Lord. The ratings just really went down the tubes. Okay, you want to reverse the interviewing process now and have the person who was interviewing turn into the person who was, well, you want to switch interviewers. So however that works, make sure you switch. Starting now, and we'll give another 7 minutes for this group, and then we'll conclude. Okay, we are 5 minutes away from being done, so it's not that I want to stop you, so I can blame it on the conference now. So if you could find a way to kind of land your conversation in the next 30 seconds, and I'll start talking again in 30 seconds. Okay, there we have it. What I'd like to do is see if we can get a couple of observations of things, and I had thought to maybe try to get the microphone around to everybody, but I'm not sure we'll be able to do that. And actually, this is actually good that you're still engaged, because first of all, obviously the big problem is if you can get them around, because the first mic people is that group over there, because they said something that's really good. So I like anybody, if you have an observation about what happened, let me know. But this group over here told me something I just was so delicious, I just got to have them repeat that for me.
So what we were saying is that we're colleagues and we've worked together for quite some time, but through doing this exercise, we're learning so much about each other on a personal level, about stuff we would never have even really asked each other.
So there you have it. If it doesn't, and really with the amount of time we have, here's what I'm trying to tell you, and this is what the thing, and some of you said, hey, look, we do this all the time. I think the key is to set the stage with the people you interact with so that you can talk about the things that you never have talked with before. Literally, I can show you people who are experts in this area, and they will literally tell you this, that they have, one of them has a definition. He calls it dialogue. He says when this thing called dialogue occurs, and it's just his made-up word to mean something deeper than conversation. When dialogue occurs, he says it's so rich, it's so humanizing that people never forget they've been involved in it. It's why people go to bars, it's why people go, it connects you. And you don't really know when or how it's going to happen, so it seems to me our job is to set the table and then look for it. Some of the observations I had is that one of the things that we really, all of us have to work at is it's so easy to go to our doings instead of our beings, right? What do you do and how do you do it? All good, but doing is driven by being. So we want to get those questions. I heard some people really say some good stuff. So any other observations? I'm talking too much. Any other observations?
Raise your hand.
Okay. One of the things, again, I think the goal is, if you can do it, and you're not, you haven't written down something on the paper that you don't want the person to, go ahead and exchange what you actually wrote about yourself with the person who interviewed you. And that person can, maybe see how many of the things that you were able to get to. And it was only 7 minutes, but remember, the person you interviewed wrote those things down in 7 minutes. So it wasn't like it couldn't be done. And the other thing is that hopefully all of you feel like, because you're all experts at it, I don't pretend to do it even as well as you do, but my goal is that from having been here and thought about it the way we've thought about it, that you would be prepared to have a deeper, richer conversation that results in dialogue and results in dollars. I think I'm done.